uh, I was thinking about using it myself.
Well, okay, go ahead.
But you're sharing your brain with the rest. But do you also have elements that you keep for yourself, and how do you organize that? And or is it
Okay,
this?
so this is a piece of software that I've had a love-hate relationship with for 21 years.
Okay.
And because I always wanted it to be something that it wasn't, and it wasn't enough for what I thought I needed. Kumu is the piece of software that I always wanted. And after I worked with the Kumu developers for 2.5 years, and they gave me 90% of what I asked for, I absolutely loved the product. Okay. I lived in Chrome because all of the stuff that I create is out on the web someplace. There's essentially nothing on my system.
Okay.
And I used a piece of software called TheBrain, Digo, to keep track of all of my links and my PDFs and notes and things like that. And the reason I liked it was that if I did a Google search, it would also search my Digo library at the same time and show everything on the same screen. So I didn't have to remember where my stuff was. So if I was looking for a particular model, I didn't even have to remember if I did it in Insight Maker or Kumu. All I had to do was type in the name and it found it. The difficulty was that while you can keep all of that content in Digo, you can't get a sense of the relationships. And it doesn't allow for an extensive array of notes formatted in any meaningful manner.
Okay.
So with the latest version of TheBrain, which came out in November of last year, version 10, they finally got it to a point where you're looking at the two pieces, this they call the plex, and this is the notes for this particular thought. These things in the plex are called thoughts.
Yeah.
And you can have parent thoughts, child thoughts, and jump thoughts. So if I go here, okay, this is the parent, these are the children, and this is a sibling of threads. And it constantly moves around based upon that orientation.
Yeah.
Okay. With version 10, they essentially embedded a web browser in TheBrain. So that if I come over here, well, I can come over here and click, and it will take me to YouTube and actually run this video, which is attached. It says down here, it says video, and this is the video.
Yeah.
If I click down here, it will actually let me watch this video inside of TheBrain itself. Okay? It will do that with all kinds of things. In other words, here's an Insight Maker model that I did, and it's opening the Insight Maker model inside. Now you can rearrange this so that this panel is below this, or on the left, or so they're on top or side by side, depending upon what you're comfortable with. This is a little small to actually be looking at this Insight Maker model. So if you simply clicked over here, it would say, which one of these do you want to open? And it would take you there in the web. If you have things, well, you can publish this to the web if you have the combo version that allows for internet access of the content. Every time you make a change, it will go ahead and upload that to the web on an ongoing basis as you're changing things. You don't have to do anything to explicitly make that happen. if you want things that you don't want other people to see, all you have to do is make them private so that other people won't be able to see them.
And then the thought is private, or also the children?
Say again?
Is the thought, is that private, or are the children then also private?
Well, if I make a thought private, when I create children for it, it will make them private by default. Because these children already exist, it's not applying the private to all of the child thoughts. I'd have to do it individually. There might be a quick way to do it, but I don't. It's not something that I've done before, so I'm not familiar with it. It does a search based upon tokens. So if I say INSHER, it's finding this piece right here. The Insight Maker Hero Calc.
Yep.
And all I typed in was INSHER. I didn't have to do all of the terms. It also allows you to search by types and tags, or in other words, you can go ahead and define types and tags to be associated with thoughts. I don't actually use them. Some people do. The environment is responsive regardless of the amount of content that you put in it. Jerry Mikulski has been working on his brain since 1997, I think.
Yeah, I saw the YouTube.
And it has several 100,000 thoughts in it. And it is just as responsive as a brain that has a dozen thoughts in it.
Do you also have a single brain, or do you have multiple brains?
You can have as many brains as you want. You can open them in tabs just like you do in a web browser. You can open them in separate windows, which I won't do here because of the recording frame around this particular window. You can do backups. You can save copies. There's a large set of options. You can look at statistics. You can copy thoughts and paste them from one brain to another. You can tell it to select all the related thoughts, whether you want the jump thoughts, parent-child thoughts. So you can select a whole series of things. Now, these are all in the current selection. I could then copy them and paste them someplace else, or do something to all of them at the same time, or get rid of them.
Okay.
With the free version, you can't do multiple attachments. You can't save it to the web. It's just a limit. In other words, it's a limited utility, though it's still powerful. With the professional version, you can actually attach documents to thoughts, and I think they give you up to 30 gigabytes of storage. But I don't use that feature either because I don't have anything to attach. All my PDFs are in Digo. PDF. Maverick Online, Jeremy Mikulski. Let me see.
What is Digo? That's
In other words, this particular icon is for Digo, and I was looking for something that I had done annotations. In other words, I use Digo because I can annotate things. Let me look at do whip. So tariffs. Mike, look at this, which this is a private thought, but if I open it here, this is in Digo, and this thought. I've actually done annotations in this PDF document over Indigo, but I've got it linked into the brain. So rather than do attachments, I keep my PDFs and my web pages that I annotate over Indigo because I can't do annotation here. It allows you, as you're wandering around through this, it keeps a gerbil trail across the bottom that says, here's where you have been. You also can create a set of pins across the top that will get you back to particular locations that you've identified you probably want to go back to at some particular time. This set of content is formatable with all of these formatting tools. Then you can embed links. You can embed links from this thought to other thoughts. You can embed images, threads. What's that? Oh, I opened it.
I think you also can add multiple notes. Huh? Yeah.
Well, you can only add one set of notes to a thought.
Okay.
But you can drop images into it. And the thing that is not evident is when you do the paid version, there's also an app for iOS and Android. So once you create this in the desktop, you can access it via the web, and you can edit it on the web. The web version has a far more limited set of capabilities than the desktop version, though you can also access it from an Android or an iOS device or a Mac.
Yeah.
Okay. And it syncs so that if I make changes to this, I go open it on my smartphone, it will sync the latest set of changes to my smartphone. And if I have attached documents, it keeps those on the server and doesn't actually try and load all those documents on my phone, because I could run out of space on my phone in a hurry. And I was in a coffee shop one day, and somebody sent me an email and said, you got a typo on this page. I opened it up on my phone, made the correction to that page, and it uploaded the change, so the next person that accessed it on the web got the latest version of it.
Yeah.
And the next time I opened it on my desktop, it downloaded the change back to my desktop.
Well, I like it. I like the idea of how you're working the brain.
And it just, you start out with a structure, but you don't have to have things connected. In other words, everything doesn't have to be related to something else. Here's you and your website, and there'll be another link to this with this video attached to it when I get done, and the video will probably be private. So while you look at this, when you access this from the web, you see this node, the events and the threads, and this is direct links to all of my different content locations. It looks like there's not much in here, but there are several thousand thoughts in here that just aren't connected to any of these locations. At this morning, here's a list of by name, by date. Information. George Will Green, Marcel. This morning, I did a Kumu demo for some people this morning. Here's a list of everything that I've changed by date.
Oh. I like the way you have set things up. It's very smart.
Well, it's the piece of software that does all the work. It just makes me look good.
but still, it's you have to connect it and you have to set it up. So,
okay. Anything else? I mean, you see why I didn't want to try and explain it in an email, because it's just there's too much here.
Yeah. Well, how since I think I read somewhere that you're over 25 years with system thinking, or
it's over 40.
40. Okay.
I'm like a fossil.
What's your dream?
To understand. It was 1976 in college, and one of the professors said, "You need to read Stafford Beer's Platform for Change," and it was a life-altering drug, to a point where I completely drank the Kool-Aid, and nothing ever looked the same after that. To a point where people used to say, "What do you do?" And when I started telling them, you could see their eyes glaze over as they were asking themselves, "Why did I ask, and how do I get him to stop?" It's taken me a long time to get to a point where I stopped inflicting my models on other people. We've been trying to sell systems thinking to the world for about 8 decades now, and for the most part, the world's not buying. And the reason they're not buying is because of the way that we're trying to sell it to them. So I quit talking about systems thinking. I just talk about relationships and their implications. And I don't get the kind of pushback I used to when I try to explain systems thinking to people. I ask questions about, well, if you do this, what are the implications? And what are the implications of that? And the implications of that? To simply begin to think beyond cause and effect and realize that all this stuff is connected, and we get ourselves in trouble usually because we find a situation that we want to deal with, and we think about it till we think we've figured out a way to address the problem, and then we stop thinking. And any action you take has multiple implications, but we don't think about them usually. We just think about, well, if I do this, it'll fix the problem. But we don't, and which is why we have fixes that fail, where we fix the same problem over and over and over and over again, because we're not actually solving the underlying problem. We're just dealing with the symptoms of the situation.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because of the time constraints that we're usually under. Usually it's far easier and more timely to deal with the symptoms than it is to actually do the longer term investment to understand and dissolve the problem itself, so we don't have to solve it over and over again. So we just deal with the symptoms, and we'll deal with them again when they come back, because they're going to.
Have you ever worked with people in the financial industry, with pension funds?
No. I spend most of my time simply getting people started thinking about relationships and their implications, and getting them to think beyond just cause and effect. So I end up covering the same ground over and over and over and over again. I mean, I'm working on a project with a person in Sydney at the moment about the oscillating nature of financial crises, and some other stuff. I retired like 15 years ago, and now I just spend my time finding things that are fascinating, and I work on them.
Very great.
So,
well, I'm working in the pension industry, and there's a lot of things going on nowadays on impact investing, sustainable investing, and transition thinking. In these areas, I think you can use system thinking perfectly.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what the arena is. It's all about relationships and their implications.
Yeah.
Any discipline you want to pick, it's the same thing. Whereas, there are certain models and methods that are appropriate to certain contexts. If you distill it down to its essence, it's just about relationships and their implications. There are no things. There are bundles of relationships to which we have affixed labels as a matter of convenience. If you develop a model and there's a car in the model, and you talk about the car's relationship to the road or to the person or whatever, the car is just a bundle of relationships that we put a label on, because we don't want to talk about all the detail associated with the car. We just want to refer to the car. So that when you build a model, you may talk about a hospital as an entity, but there are thousands of relationships going on inside of the hospital. But for what you're thinking about at the moment, you just want to talk about the hospital. So it's a bundle of relationships to which we affixed a label to make it a matter of convenience for the level of abstraction that we're talking about at the moment. Oftentimes, when people begin to develop relationship models, they get lost in their own detail. The model is far more complex and complicated than it actually needs to be, because they get lost in their own wiring diagrams, because they haven't abstracted certain things back to a point of the level that they want to think about it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for explaining. I think I will take also a subscription on the brain.
So if you're going to spend some time working on developing relationships in Kumu, and you develop some models that you'd like to chat about, give me a ring.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I will do so.
So
thank you very much.
Well, your first name is Marcel?
Yeah, Marcel.
Okay, because it keeps showing up on the screen Marce, which is why I was confused the first time, because I thought your name was Marcy. So.
Oh, well, is that something in Zoom or?
Maybe it's in Zoom, because it just shows Marce and the L doesn't show up. And then I looked on LinkedIn and it said Marcel. So I'm less confused now.
I was a little bit confused with Zoom, because I accepted your invitation for the Zoom meeting, and then suddenly Zoom was inside my computer and Gmail and whatever, etc. So I will check where all my data is. So
okay.
I will change it.
In a little while, I'll go ahead and send you a link to the video for this. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.